Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I joined voluntarily. It wasn't actually called an enlistment, but it was voluntary. Yeah.
Where were you living at the time?
In a town called Montevideo, Minnesota.
Why did you join?
I wanted an affordable way to pay for college and to serve my country at the same time.
What branch did you join?
The Army,
That's what
the U.S. Army.
Okay, why did you pick this branch?
Well, initially I had wanted to go to the U.S. Naval Academy, and I wasn't accepted there, but I was accepted at the U.S. Military Academy, so I ended up being in the Army.
Do you recall your first days in service?
I do, pretty clearly.
What did it feel like?
It was a big change. Growing up in a small town, I grew up on a farm actually, went to school in a small town. Being in the military was actually a big change for me, just everything about it was different. So it was a culture shock, I guess you'd call it.
Can you tell me a little bit about your boot camp or training experience?
Yep, so the first 8 weeks was basically called boot camp or beast barracks. Consisted of waking up very early in the morning, doing lots of exercises, getting your hair cut very short, and just learning how to be a soldier, basically.
Do you remember your instructors?
Some of them. Some I'll probably never forget.
How did you get through it?
It's a good question. I'm not really sure. You just wake up every morning and take the day as it comes.
Okay. Did you serve in any wars?
I've been deployed to combat 3 times.
Where did you go?
The first time to Iraq, the second time to Afghanistan, and the third time to Iraq.
Do you remember arriving and what it was like for each of those times?
I do. The first time, we hadn't invaded Iraq yet, so we actually landed in Kuwait, and it was in February, so it was pretty cold at night, but very warm in the daytime. And I remember you could smell the air. It's like a mixture of ocean air and like smoke from oil refineries, and that's what it smelled like there.
What was your job or assignment?
I've been an Army aviation officer for 21 years, so always something related to that field.
Okay, what exactly do you do in that?
When we deployed in 2003, I was what's known as a production control officer for an aviation maintenance unit, and our first job in Kuwait was to receive all the aircraft coming off of ships, and we built them up at a port in Kuwait for support into Iraq, and then shortly after the invasion, we moved into Iraq also to provide aviation maintenance support. And the second time I was deployed to Afghanistan was a similar role. I was an aviation maintenance company commander. We were stationed in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and provided support to about 40 different helicopters, Apaches, Chinooks, and Blackhawks, and I was also a Blackhawk mission pilot, so I flew quite a few missions in Kandahar. And then the third time I was in the Oregon National Guard. The first 2 deployments I was on active duty. Third time I was an Oregon Guardsman and was the executive officer for a fixed wing battalion, which we had cargo planes that flew cargo all over the country of Iraq.
Can you tell me a couple of your most memorable experiences?
I'd have to think about that a little bit. I was stationed in Germany for a while, and everything about Germany was pretty memorable. I like living there. I was also stationed in Korea. That was a very memorable experience, just experiencing a couple different cultures. And then, of course, going to Iraq and Afghanistan. We didn't live the culture like we did in Germany and Korea, but those were pretty exciting also. One thing I'll probably never forget, and it seems pretty simple. We were getting ready to invade Iraq, and we had all our trucks lined up, and it was late at night, and one of the soldiers in the truck next to me had a little burner out, and we have these little cups called a canteen cup, and he could warm up the water enough to make instant coffee, and we all had instant coffee in our meals, and so I had a cup of instant coffee, and it was like the first time I'd had coffee in weeks, so that was pretty memorable.
Sounds like it. Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I have been, yeah.
How did you get them?
I was awarded the Bronze Star for leading a convoy from Kuwait into Iraq.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
In 2003, through letters,
Mm-hmm.
like mail, U.S. mail correspondence.
What was the food like?
When we first arrived in Iraq, we didn't have any food other than meals ready to eat for about 3 months. And then for about 3 months after that, we had hamburgers and hot dogs every day. So it wasn't until we had been there for about 6 months that we finally started to get some variety in the meals. So the food was never really very good, but it got better as time went on.
Did you have plenty of supplies?
I think so, yeah.
Did you feel pressure or stress?
Yes. Yeah, that was, the invasion was, looking back on it now, probably one of the scariest, but looking back on it, it was actually one of the most, invading another country is pretty fun, actually. So it was fun, it was exciting, it was something new and different. But it was fairly frightening to think about, hey, we're going to Iraq tomorrow.
I bet it was. Was there anything special you did for good luck?
Yeah, my German neighbor gave me a little Catholic prayer card, and it was written in German. I still don't really know what it said, but I always carried that in my pocket.
How did people entertain themselves?
In 2003, there wasn't a lot for entertainment, so like soldiers occasionally would catch a scorpion or a camel spider, which isn't really a spider, but it's a pretty creepy looking insect, and then they'd put them in a bucket and let them fight and see which one would win. So that was about it for entertainment.
What did you do when you were on leave?
I went home back to visit my family in Minnesota.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual event?
Oh, I'm sure there were some. I don't know if I can recall anything like particularly right off the top of my head.
Did you pull any pranks or any others that pulled pranks while you were there?
No, I don't think so.
Do you have any photographs from the time?
I do. They're digital and probably on a CD somewhere at our house, but yeah, I have some.
What did you think of your officers or fellow soldiers?
For the most part, they were all, top-notch Americans, and I was very honored and proud to go to combat with them.
Did you keep a personal diary?
I did for about 3 months until we actually got to Iraq and really got into a routine, and then every day it seemed like I was writing the same thing over and over and over, so I stopped at that point. But I did keep a pretty good journal of the first 3 months going through Kuwait and moving into Iraq until we reached our final destination.
What did you do in the days or weeks afterwards, like once you came back here?
Usually, when your deployment is complete, you go through a 7 or 8 day reintegration period. The days are the days are short, but basically soldiers, you don't have to work, but what you do for your duty is you find out all the resources that are available for soldiers and their family members. If they have problems, or make sure all their medical issues, if they have any, are addressed, a bunch of stuff like that, and just kind of gets them back into the routine of being a soldier in the United States or wherever they're at. And then usually you have a couple weeks to just take leave at the end of the deployment, so you can go home or go on vacation or whatever you'd like to do, just to kind of decompress and unwind.
Did you work or go back to school or anything after that, or you just?
Well, for the first 2 when I was on active duty, I just took a couple weeks vacation and then went back to work. And the third time, I think I had like 3 weeks of leave, and then I came back to work here.
You said earlier that you wanted to have a way to pay for college. Were you supported by the GI Bill when you did that?
No, the military academy, basically you go there and it's free, but you have to serve in the military for at least 5 years after that. Army flight school is very similar. After you complete flight school, you have to stay in the Army for 6 years. So by the time I had finished that 6 years, I had been in the Army for about eight years total. And I was in the middle of my Germany tour, going to Iraq and Afghanistan, and just decided to make it, decided to stay in and make it a career, I guess, after that.
Did you make any close friendships while you were in service?
Absolutely. Some of my closest friends were made in the service.
Are you still friends with them? Do you still have a close relationship?
Yeah.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Sure, I would think so, yeah.
How did your service and experience affect your life?
Well, it's pretty much become my life. It's my career. I've been doing this for 21 years, so I think by now everything I do is kind of viewed through the lens of an Army officer, not a civilian, not a business person, not a farmer, not a banker, not a fisherman, but an Army officer. Is
there anything you would like to add or that we have not covered in this interview?
No, I guess one memorable thing, I met my wife. She became my wife in Iraq, and so that was kind of interesting. We met there, and then we started dating when we both got done with Iraq. We were both stationed in Germany, and then we ended up getting married after we moved here.